No, va bene, va bene. Yes, funziona. Good afternoon, everybody. Buon pomeriggio, and welcome to today's hybrid conference on Invest in India, political scenario and post-pandemic opportunities. I'm very happy to say hybrid because finally we're out of the webinar system and we're all here together. It's a good change. I'll keep my remarks brief. First of all, I'd like to welcome Ambassador Dr. Nina Malhotra, Ambassador of India to Italy, Ambassador Vincenzo De Luca, Ambassador of Italy to India, Ambassador Armelini, who has been a historic link in between two countries, Minister Amarnath from the state of Andhra Pradesh. I'd like to say that India is, for Italy, a new destination in a way for investment and a very historic one. The two countries have had trade relations since Roman times, but I think after the pandemic and after all that has happened in the recent geopolitical scenario, the two countries now will work closer together, and especially after the visit of Minister Luigi Di Maio to India, I think this has started a new era in the collaboration between the two countries. Let me invite our host today, who has kindly allowed us to conduct this conference in such a beautiful setting, Professor Francesco Scialone, the Managing Partner of Grimaldi Law, to say a few words.
Yes, thank you. I only want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to Vas and to Daniele that we have been so happy to organize together this event that has a significant presence here in person and on the web. We strongly believe as Grimaldi in the cooperation with India because we decided to have a partner, a member of our alliance years ago, and Satinder Kapoor is today with us virtually to represent also to give to the floor his voice and his competence. And as Grimaldi, is an honor to be in the condition to host this event today. We believe that only working together, staying together, the German people are used to say zusammen to explain how things have to be done in order that things works. Is the approach that we want to follow today and in coming months and years, working together with the high qualified representative that we have today and also with the people used to know this kind of business, this kind of countries, because only regular cooperation realized during the year, during a significant number of opportunities, can allow people to start working together on a very regular basis. In our approach, the way that we believe that has to be followed is to create a real network. The idea of the Grimaldi Alliance is to create a network where there was nothing. And to have a partner, a regular partner in a country important like India, is a way that we strongly believe is the only that allow people to start working together on a very regular basis. With this feeling, with this approach, I want to leave the floor to the intervention that are planned to be done and give Daniele the possibility to present the high qualified work that is always done by the CESPI, as in this occasion also.
Thank you very much. For me, it's an honor to welcome all the high-level representatives of Italian and Indian institutions, companies, experts that accept our invitation for this first event dedicated to the relationship between India and Italy. Thank you also to the two partners, to the Grimaldi Alliance and such association that accepted to be part of this event. CESPI è un think tank internazionalistico che svolge attività di analisi, ricerca, policy oriented sui principali temi dell'agenda internazionale. Il nostro compito è fornire al sistema Italia, inteso come istituzioni, aziende, società civile, ma anche l'opinione pubblica, chiavi per comprendere una realtà che per questo abbiamo deciso di aprire un focus su un paese, l'India, che è la più grande democrazia del mondo per numero di abitanti e crocevie di sfide importanti che sono all'ordine del giorno dell'agenda internazionale. Dai temi del cambiamento climatico, l'energia, che vedono l'India un attore decisivo per il raggiungimento degli obiettivi definiti a livello internazionale, il tema dello sviluppo sostenibile, la lotta alle disuguaglianze, centrale per una crescita equilibrata per un paese che sta crescendo rapidamente, fino ai temi più recenti legati ai nuovi equilibri geopolitici che la guerra in Ucraina sta ridisegnando, o della difesa dei valori democratici di cui l'India che sono alla base della nascita dell'India moderna. I rapporti tra Italia e India si stanno intensificando, la pandemia ha ridotto il volume degli scambi commerciali, ma c'è una crescente attività delle imprese a livello istituzionale e India e Italia hanno opportunità importanti di scambio e di integrazione. L'Italia può proporsi anche come un interlocutore privilegiato anche nei rapporti tra l'India e l'Unione Europea. L'obiettivo dell'incontro di oggi vuole essere, con l'aiuto dei nostri interlocutori, di provare appunto a accendere i riflettori su questa relazione, evidenziando le opportunità, punti di forza, ma anche le sfide che ci troviamo ad affrontare insieme. Vi diamo già un appuntamento, una prossima opportunità, una prossima occasione per proseguire questo dialogo e questo approfondimento e auguro a tutti un buon lavoro.
Grazie mille, Daniele. Thank you so much, Daniele. And I would invite the Ambassador of India to Italy, Her Excellency Dr. Nina Malhotra, to say a few words. Ambassador.
Thank you, Vas. It's not a few words. I prepared a speech for a good 5-10 minutes. I hope it's okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and honor for me to speak at this event. At the outset, I wish to express my gratitude to President CHESP, Dr. Daniel Jerry, and Professor Francesco Ciaudoli, Managing Partner of Grimaldi, and of course, Sakshi for this timely initiative of organizing a discussion on such a relevant topic. We recently had a very successful visit of Minister Di Maio to India in May, accompanied by a powerful business delegation. And during the visit, apart from ministerial meetings, we had a very fruitful roundtable discussion among the CEOs of prominent Indian and Italian companies. Minister Di Maio also took time off his busy schedule last week and visited an Indian company in Caserta that is operating successfully in Italy. This was, in the series of high-level exchanges that we've been having, and that is an index of our growing relations. And I'm confident that this event will further generate and deepen the interests of many more Italian companies and help contribute to already flourishing India-Italy economic relations. As you're all aware, India has emerged as one of the fastest growing economy in the world. In fact, the fastest among the G20 countries, and an attractive investment destination driven by economic reforms, a large consumption base, and highly skilled, talented, and cost-effective workforce. Like all other countries in the world, the Indian economy was also critically affected by the pandemic and the associated lockdowns and restrictions. But India has managed to turn the crisis posed by COVID-19 into an opportunity in many ways. We significantly raised our healthcare infrastructure and became an important net provider of health security for the world. We not only launched our vaccination drive, which is the world's largest inoculation program, but have also become the foremost manufacturer of the Oxford, AstraZeneca, and Covaxin COVID-19 vaccines, fulfilling over 50% of global demand for vaccines. Termed as the pharmacy of the world, India is already the topmost producer of generic medicines worldwide, and pharmaceuticals is among the top 8 sectors of India, attracting foreign direct investment or FDIs. India attracted highest ever FDI inflows at $83.6 billion during the year 21-22 from over 100 countries, in 50+ sectors. This is a result of some very decisive steps taken by the Government of India to transform our economy and the business environment, which has given confidence to the investors. Several measures have been taken to revive India's economy in the post-pandemic world, including a special economic package of $267 billion for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is a self-reliant India, with an intent to make India the world's leading manufacturing and supply hub. In March 2020, government introduced production-linked incentives or PLI schemes targeting 3 industries: mobile manufacturing and electric components, pharmaceuticals, and medical device manufacturing. The PLI concept has since been expanded, now covering 13 sectors with a total budgeted outlay of almost $27 billion. The other steps taken include unveiling a new simplified tax code, that is GST, enacting an effective bankruptcy law, and adopting several measures aimed at cutting through the red tape. The Government of India has started fast-track clearance to be given through an empowered group of secretaries, and a project development cell is constituted in each of the Government of India ministries to coordinate with the investors and the government, both at the federal as well as at the state level. The consistent reform efforts by the Government of India have seen India's ranking on the World Bank's ease of doing business scale rise from 142nd in 2014 to now 63rd in the 2020 report. India is fueling one of the largest infrastructure development plans with 11 industrial corridors, and PM's Gati Shakti plan, which is the national master plan for multimodal connectivity across all segments, including aviation, railways, roads, ports, as well as telecom and power generation, with a budget outlay of $1.4 trillion from 2020 to 2025. Friends, we are the #1 smartphone consumer and #1 global fintech adopter with second largest internet subscribers base. India has the highest adoption rate for fintech in the world at 87%. Policies that have enabled this growth are the Digital India Initiative, a conducive policy environment in addition to a sizable talent pool. We have the second largest global retail index, and India's e-commerce promises to grow exponentially, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities that have shown high consumption pattern over the last 2 years. We have the third largest domestic aviation market and third largest startup ecosystem with 69,000 recognized startups and over 158 unicorns with a total valuation of over $450 billion. The count of Indian startups has grown to over 70,000 from 300 to 400 in 2014. India is expeditiously moving forward on its energy transition journey. The government's plan to establish a national hydrogen mission is a step in this direction. India and Italy have launched a strategic partnership on energy transition last year and already have some successful partnerships with Italian companies like Enel, Maire Tecnimont, Snam in the renewable energy sector. European Union is our third largest trading partner with bilateral merchandise trade between India and the EU at about 103.4 billion in the first 10 months of financial year 2021-2022. And this is only set to increase with EU-India negotiations for a free trade agreement having been reopened at the India-EU summit in May last year. Official talks are set to resume this year, with India having expressed interest in an early harvest program, which is a limited trade agreement to lower tariffs on a small set of services before moving on to a full-fledged pact. We could also explore the possibility of involving the Indian and Italian startup companies to develop joint projects. Agro-industry is another area where our two countries can collaborate further with governmental authorities in several states of India, offering contract farming and additional incentives. I would like to mention that ministerial delegations from two states of India, Haryana and Odisha, are expected later this month and early July. An Embassy of India is organizing business interactions, and we welcome participation from all of you interested in furthering collaboration. India-Italy bilateral trade and investment relations are growing and are at an all-time high. Last year, our trade registered a growth of over 54%, and the total trade figure is now more than $13 billion, and it is the highest ever between our two countries. I invite more participation from Italy in our trade fairs and other business and commerce-related events held both at federal and state level in India as well as in Italy to explore opportunities for collaboration. With a nominal GDP of $2.8 trillion, India is now the 6th largest economy in the world and the 3rd largest by purchasing power parity. Compared to the global average of 6%, India's economic growth rate is 8.9% in the financial year 2022. The COVID-19 pandemic has only served to underscore the important role that India now plays in global market. Thank
you very much, Ambassador Malhotra. Ambassador Malhotra has also been very key. I mean, she was posted here right in the middle of the pandemic, and she's been very key to furthering the relationships between the two countries. And as we may call it, hit the ground running in an emergency. So thank you. I've just been told that His Excellency Minister Gudivada Amarnath, the Minister of Information Technology and Industries of the state of Andhra Pradesh, has joined. So welcome, Minister. He was not able to connect a little earlier. I'd like to invite Ambassador Vincenzo De Luca, the Ambassador of Italy, to address us. Ambassador De Luca, welcome, and the mic is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. And first of all, let me address a warm regard to my dear colleague Nina Malhotra, Ambassador of India to Italy, and to Pietro Fassino, President of the Parliamentary Commission for External Affairs, and to all the other speakers. I would be very focused in my speech in which is the state of the relations between Italy and India, Europe and India, and how I think there is now a momentum for further investment in India. First of all, for also the evolution of a geopolitical scenario all over the world, closer relation between India and Europe, India and Italy, and India and the Western countries in the last few years, and also shared vision on some of the main issues, starting from pandemic. We have discussed a lot also on climate change, but also on the Indo-Pacific evolution. And India certainly is one of the countries that is a pillar for the strategy of European Union in the Indo-Pacific, because we would like to have a diversification of a global value chain, and Indo-Pacific is one of the most important area in this diversification. But also coming to the bilateral relationship, last year, in a year of COVID, as mentioned also by Ambassador Malhotra, we reached the top level of bilateral trade. You can imagine 2021, with the terrible wave of COVID in Italy and in India, we reached the top level of bilateral trade with $13 billion of trade. And also in terms of investment, we increased our presence here in India as Italian investment, but also we received further investment from India to Italy. We are creating conditions for enhancing our partnerships towards strategic sectors. Sectors like energy transition, defense industry, manufacturing, and of course, also because Italy is one of the champions on this field, creative industry. So I think we have to promote more and more awareness in the Italian and European business community, as well as in the Indian business community. And I thank Francesco Sciaudoni, Studio Grimaldi, and CESPI for organizing this webinar. We have organized a lot of these kind of events also with Confindustria, with our association, also Assolombarda, Emilia Romagna, Piemonte, and others, because I think it's very important to understand now which are the potential, the opportunities to invest in the coming 5-10 years, because this is a kind of partnership that needs not only a short-term approach, but medium and long-term investment and engagement each other. And this is why in the last Digital Summit 2020, we adopted for the first time in the history of the relations between Italy and India, a plan of action with the very well selected priorities, the ones I mentioned before. And also last year in the meeting between Prime Minister Draghi and Prime Minister Modi in Rome on the occasion of the bilateral meeting side of the G20 summit, there was the adoption of a strategic joint declaration on energy transition and green economy that are the frontiers to become more and more independent and more advanced in terms of technology. So now we have all the potential and the possibility to really integrate more and more our manufacturing companies with the Indian manufacturing companies. After all, India is the second manufacturing country in Europe, and India has the ambition to become a global platform for manufacturing. So we not only here talking about trade and investment, we are talking about more strategic ambition, that is to integrate and create opportunities for a diversified global value chain. I can tell you a number that in the last 6 months, India doubled the export to Italy in some sectors like iron, aluminium, and these are sectors that are fundamental for our manufacturing companies. It's also because there has been a diversification of procurement for our companies all over the world. So we have to consider all these in a more long-term perspective, but we have to start now, and we have to invest now. We are still under the potential of bilateral partnership, not only Italy, but also France and Germany with India has invested less than is the potential. And also India towards Europe has invested less than potential. But now there is also another very important process that was launched last year in Oporto in the EU-India Summit. That was the negotiation on free trade agreement, investment protection agreement, and geographical indication agreement. These are 3 pillars of negotiations that could allow us to become more and more integrated. And also, in the last visit of the President of the European Commission here in Delhi last month, it was signed an important agreement for the creation of a Council on Technology and Trade. A similar instrument exists only between EU and US. So you can imagine the importance of this perspective, not only to promote trade and investment, but also to share technology and also sensitive technology between Europe and India. And without mentioning the digital sector, we have Matilde Gigno that is the promoter of a very successful startup. We have a record of unicorn, as mentioned by Ambassador Malhotra, unicorn and startup, and I hope that also some Italian entrepreneurs join this process of innovation and technology. So when we talk about the defense industry, now we are also in this field after a period of difficulties in the relation on this area. We are promoting more and more activities and investment from Italy to India with the same sense mentioned before of working in the framework of making India and self-reliance India, because there is a need of India to develop their own capacity for defense industry. And this is also a strategic aspect in the relation between India and other countries in the world. And they want to diversify, not only diversify, but develop their own capacity in terms of technology. And the Italian defense industry is very well familiar with this kind of investment, with transfer of technology and promoting technology in this country. Without talking also now, I want just to a very short mention to the creative industry. We have in this sector promoted more and more collaboration in the movie industry, Bollywood, Venice, and Anika, but also in the design and fashion. We are launching ambitious project to create an educational center here in India with our companies and institutions from Italy. So just to conclude, I want to tell you that we are also reinforcing our instruments here in India. Last month, with the visit of our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Luigi Di Maio, here in Delhi, we opened a new consulate general in Bangalore. This is also the signal that we want to invest to the future of India and the future of the relation between Italy and India. And also we have organized several financial facilities with CDP, SACE and Siemens to provide new opportunities for SMEs. And last but not least, Italy is the first country to promote a pilot project between European Union and India on connectivity that is more and more strategic. We will be a fiber cable between Europe and India, led by our company Team Sparkle with Google and Oman Mobile. This will be open January 24 and will provide a great opportunity to integrate the e-platform from India and Europe. Thank you so much. I wish all the best to our companies who are attending this webinar. And thank you so much, Studio Grimaldi, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ambassador De Luca. Thank you so much, Ambassador De Luca. Both countries are very, very fortunate to have somebody as passionate as him in Delhi. And I do believe he's having a great time there as well. Next, we'd like to welcome His Excellency Minister Gudivada Amarnath, Information Technology and Industries Minister of the State of Andhra Pradesh. Minister, welcome.
Hi, how are you? A very good evening and a warm welcome to Her Excellency Dr. Nina Malhotra, Ambassador of India to Italy. His Excellency Lusa, Ambassador of Italy to India, His Excellency Gilberto, Deputy Minister for Economic Development, and Mr. Shenoy, and Mr. Professor Francisco, and an industry and from industrialists from Italy and India. And ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you all. I thank you for your kind remarks and perspectives on promoting India-Italian strategic and economic cooperation during COVID and beyond. I'm pleased to be a part of this session today, coming at the right time of the year to allow us to take a collective look at the challenges and opportunities emerging with the onset of the pandemic and plan to prepare for the years coming ahead. India today is at a decisive point in its journey towards limitless prosperity and possibilities. And it's time that the country has moved ahead with the strategic next steps in the pace of a crucial shift with reforms. The economic crisis sparked by COVID-19 has spurred actions that enabled the country's economy in a high growth track and created jobs for millions of workers by 2030. An agenda on reforms with both short-term and measures and structural reforms has been implemented by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, and the states over the past 2-3 years have paved way for economic growth in the coming decade. India has been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic due to the increased global share of poverty and greater inequality, higher dependency on informal sectors, while laying bare deep-seated inequalities and vulnerabilities. The pandemic has proved us with an opportunity to chart a path toward a more equitable and robust recovery. With millions of unemployed in search of non-farm jobs by 2030, we need to act decisively to chart our high growth trajectory, which can be accelerated through manufacturing, construction, and exports-driven economy. And for this trajectory to be sustainable, we need to raise productivity and income of workers, small, mid-sized, and large firms by means of digital advancements. Building efficient industrial policies and enabling engines to boost competitiveness and create ecosystems for enterprise to thrive. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji and the Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal ji for the unprecedented reforms taken to tackle the pandemic and reviving the industries. The Atmanirbhar awakening across borders, and we see greenfield projects and FDI to India with renewed vigor and confidence into Indian markets. The state of Andhra Pradesh under the leadership of our Honorable Chief Minister Sri Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy Garu has embarked on a journey of consistent growth towards sustainable development, ranking top 3 in the country in achieving the sustainable development goals. In the year 2021, the state has been rated as top state in the country in the last couple of years for ease of doing business by the World Bank Group, making it globally competitive investment destination. We are committed to realizing our Prime Minister's goal of India becoming a $5 trillion economy. We believe Andhra Pradesh will be one of the main states that will be driving this vision into reality by increasing our contribution to the Indian economy from 5% of GDP today to 7% by 2034 under the guidance of our Honorable Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy Garu. Andhra Pradesh, our state, and Italy share a very close and strong bond, and Italian institutions have been strategic partners in the state of Andhra Pradesh industrial development growth. I emphasize on the significance of the Italian territory and partnerships in the various avenues, especially developing industrial hubs, sector-specified SEZs, and industrial corridor-led development, drive R&D and attract investments into the sectors of growth such as high-tech and electronics, textiles, and then leather, life sciences, and pharma and other manufacturing sectors. Andhra Pradesh, is well positioned to drive India's growth into coming years. Andhra Pradesh is the largest 8th state in India, according to for 4% of the population. Our economy currently at $141 billion is being propelled by sustained double-digit growth rate. We have 970-kilometer coastline, which is the second longest coastline, dotted with 4 large ports and 4 more ports under development, all of which are ideally suited for the robust trade with Asia Pacific region. We have 6 operational airports, which is the highest for any state in India, making it conveniently connected to the whole of India and the world. The Telugu community is amongst the most enterprising community in the world. We produce 1 engineer from every household and account for over 25% of the IT workforce in India. Notably, the Telugu diaspora is the second largest Indian linguistic diaspora abroad and growing over 1.2 million people across the world. So we have transitions and opportunities. Andhra Pradesh is currently on the cusp of major economic and social transformation with the demographic transition, the urban transition, the transition into the decarbonized economy. Industrialization to integrate the global value chains to build efficiency to boost competitiveness. We have the Visakhapatnam Chennai Industrial Corridor. We are coming up with the Chennai Bangalore Industrial Corridor, the Hyderabad Bangalore Industrial Corridor. We are developing YSR Jagananna Mega Industrial Hub in Kopati with an extent of almost 3,155 acres, and YSR Electronic Manufacturing Kopati in 801 acres with an investment of around 730 crore to attract the anchor and electronic industries as well. We are home to Kandi's second longest coastline. As I mentioned earlier, we are giving access to global trading routes through ports that can serve vast stretches of India.
Yes. It's stable as soon as possible.
So Andhra Pradesh is focusing on the industrial sector. The focus on leather. Andhra Pradesh is major producer of hides and skins in India, contributing to 19 million pieces per annum, which constitutes to 10% of India's raw material. The state has about 450 slaughterhouses, 34 large and medium tanneries, producing about 40 million square feet of processed hides and skins per annum. So we are also into apparel and textile industry. Andhra Pradesh is the 7th largest producer of cotton in India at a capacity of 1.9 bales of cotton per year, with 8 large jute mills and 238 ginning and pressing units, 3.6 million spindles that constitute 7% of the total India's capacity. We have 2 SEZs, 5 textile parks. Brandix Apparel Park at Visakhapatnam is one of such park, which is home to global brands such as Jockey, Victoria. Special prescription to pharma and biotech and medtech. Andhra Pradesh is a strong pillar to the nation in fighting COVID-19 by producing 1 million RT-PCR kits, 500 oxygen concentrators, 100 ventilators every day. It is India's first integrated medical device manufacturing park, AMTZ, that achieved this feat. So our state is home to 250 plus pharma companies, units which are 38 WHO approved and 20 are UFSDA approved. Our pharma production constitutes 16% of the India's production of and 6% of the national export. Our state is home to some of the largest and reputed players such as Reddy's Laboratories, Biocon, Hetero, Aurobindo, and etc. Andhra Pradesh is driving to India's in driving India's transformation. The state is a growing economy and the large state, 8th largest state in India, as I mentioned earlier. 5% of the total GDP, USD of around 139 billion for the financial year 2019 and 2020, out of which industrial output contributes to over 25% at USD 35.1 billion. So to conclude, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to Andhra Pradesh with the assurance that the government accords high priority to our relationship with Italy, ensure highest levels of support for all Italian endeavors in Andhra Pradesh, with its national competitive advantages of second longest coastline of 974 kilometers, quality infrastructure coupled with congenial industrial environment, growing middle class, and most importantly, a stable government with corporate growth focused governance makes Andhra Pradesh becoming a destination for global investors. Our motto is, you grow, we grow. I welcome you all to Andhra Pradesh, where abundance meets prosperity. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Minister Amarnath. We will have a copy of his address available for download later on because I think we lost him a couple of times. As they were saying here, I think Tim Sparkle needs to work quickly for that undersea cable. So that said, I would like to welcome Honorable Piero Fassino, the member of the Italian Parliament and the President of the Parliamentary Commission for External Affairs of the Republic of Italy. Honorable Fassino.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti, saluto intanto i nostri interlocutori del governo indiano e gli altri esponenti autorevoli della società indiana. Ringrazio molto ovviamente l'ambasciatore De Luca, che è un motore attivissimo di relazioni italo-indiane che sta dando un grande impulso a queste relazioni. Ringrazio lo studio Sciaudone e ringrazio il CESPI che hanno promosso questo incontro e saluto l'ambasciatrice dell'India. Ma le cose che sono state fin qui dette rendono evidente perché noi abbiamo promosso è stata promossa questa iniziativa dal CESPI e dallo studio Sciaudone. E l'ambasciatore De Luca mi pare ha detto con grande chiarezza quali sono gli interessi strategici che muovono l'Italia a guardare all'India come un partner fondamentale. L'India è un grande paese, un grande protagonista dell'economia globale, come tutti sappiamo, è uno dei 4 paesi del formato BRIC, che quindi è uno dei grandi paesi che segna, diciamo, il nuovo scenario geografico e geopolitico del mondo. È un paese strategico per collocazione geofisica e geopolitica nel continente asiatico e nell'area pacifica. È un grande protagonista intorno a temi fondamentali, quali per esempio il climate change, gli scambi, le qualità e le regole degli scambi internazionali e via di questo passo. E quindi per questo credo che chiunque abbia interesse a guardare alle prospettive, al futuro del mondo, non può ignorare l'India, che assume sempre di più un ruolo strategico fondamentale. I temi intorno a cui l'Italia ha interesse a promuovere questa relazione sono già stati abbondantemente indicati. Intanto tutto il tema del climate change, della transizione energetica, del mutamento degli assetti energetici e climatici del mondo. Sappiamo come con la riunione della COP di Londra sono stati definiti una serie di impegni e di obiettivi. Sappiamo anche che naturalmente un grande paese come l'India ha l'esigenza di avere una temporalità per raggiungere gli obiettivi della neutralità climatica che tenga conto di tante variabili e non necessariamente i tempi coincidono con gli obiettivi che si è data l'Unione Europea di una neutralità climatica nel 2050. Tuttavia, proprio perché bisogna lavorare insieme per affrontare questa emergenza, che è un'emergenza che attiene al futuro e ai destini del pianeta, io credo che qui c'è un primo grande tema di lavoro comune. Come insieme affrontiamo il tema del climate change, della transizione energetica, del mutamento delle fonti di energia e insieme sviluppiamo programmi di cooperazione che vadano in questa direzione. Un secondo grande tema riguarda l'innovazione tecnologica e la ricerca. Noi sappiamo bene che l'economia globale è fondata sulla capacità delle imprese di mettere in campo costantemente un'innovazione dei loro prodotti. E quindi il tema di come si usa l'opportunità della digitalizzazione, come si usano le opportunità dall'intelligenza artificiale, come si mette in campo una strategia di costante e continua innovazione tecnologica che sia capace di aggredire via via i problemi della competitività, scommettendo non sui costi, ma scommettendo soprattutto sull'innovazione e sulla qualità dei prodotti, questo è un punto fondamentale. Ora, sappiamo bene come l'India ha investito molto in questa direzione, come sia diventato via via un grandissimo laboratorio di innovazione tecnologica, di formazione di alto livello, di ricerca scientifica, e quindi una cooperazione in questo campo è un altro campo fondamentale. C'è poi tutto il tema della regolazione dei mercati aperti, perché i mercati sono aperti, ma sappiamo bene che poi, al di là, diciamo, delle regole di principio, c'è una concreta gestione degli scambi commerciali che richiede di essere affrontata per superare barriere protezionistiche, per determinare regole preferenziali reciproche, per favorire appunto politiche di scambi commerciali e di investimenti più forti e più ampie di quelle fin qui realizzate. Il Covid-19 ci ha messo davanti a una grande tema, è il tema di come si tutela il mondo dalle pandemie. E sappiamo bene che non è una battaglia che si vince una volta per sempre, e anche questa richiede una costante e continua capacità di agire sul fronte della ricerca scientifica, della produzione farmaceutica, dell'analisi, diciamo, delle analisi e delle capacità di mettere in campo terapie di cura nuove. Tra l'altro l'India è uno dei grandi produttori di vaccini, è uno dei grandi produttori mondiali nel settore farmaceutico. L'Italia è uno dei principali produttori farmaceutici europei, quindi c'è un terreno obiettivamente comune su cui lavorare e sviluppare cooperazione. Accanto a questo poi ci sono i dossier politici, più strettamente politici. Mi riferisco a tutto lo scacchiere Indo-Pacifico e a come vi è la necessità di realizzare politiche di cooperazione e politica che consentono di garantire sicurezza, stabilità, rispetto della indipendenza di ogni paese, della sovranità di ogni paese, evitare forme di condizionamento, di ingerenza sulla vita dei paesi grandi o piccoli dell'area che giustamente richiedono di essere invece rispettati nella loro identità e nella loro sovranità. E qui c'è un grande tema che non è stato fin qui evocato, ma noi sappiamo c'è, cioè come si fanno i conti con l'espansionismo cinese nell'area indo-pacifica e come si sviluppa una politica che riduca ogni forma di conflittualità a vantaggio invece di strategie di cooperazione e di stabilità e di sicurezza. C'è il tema del rapporto tra l'Unione Europea e l'India. È evidente che sempre di più l'Unione Europea ha un interesse strategico a sviluppare con l'India una relazione a tutto campo, sia sul fronte economico che sul fronte sociale che sul fronte politico, E l'Italia, come uno dei principali paesi dell'Unione Europea, io credo, è chiamata a svolgere un ruolo di impulso, di sollecitazione e di concorso ad un'attenzione sempre più alta dell'Unione Europea nei confronti dell'India. E dietro a tutto questo sta sullo sfondo un grande tema, che è il tema di come si affronta la questione della giustizia su scala internazionale, perché anni e anni di globalizzazione in realtà hanno accentuato le sperequazioni e le differenze nella distribuzione del reddito dei cittadini, nella distribuzione, negli equilibri tra le aree di mercato, nel rapporto tra paesi ricchi e paesi emergenti, e come si affronta invece una governance del pianeta che sia capace di realizzare anche politiche di riduzione delle diseguaglianze, riduzione delle differenze e di maggiori opportunità e equità nella distribuzione della ricchezza e nel loro uso. Sono tutti questi che mi fanno dire che appunto questo nostro incontro è un incontro che affronta un nodo strategico. L'Italia guarda all'India come un partner strategico essenziale, lo ha ricordato bene l'ambasciatore De Luca. Stiamo lavorando molto su questo fronte e la visita del ministro Di Maio va in questa direzione. Intendiamo sviluppare anche dei rapporti che accompagnano i rapporti intergovernativi sul piano parlamentare. Ho avuto già occasione di avere occasione di colloquio col Presidente della Commissione Esteri del Parlamento indiano e mi riprometto di proseguire e di intensificare le relazioni anche sul piano parlamentare, accompagnando così quello che già si sta promuovendo e sviluppando sul piano intergovernativo. Credo quindi che ci siano tutte le condizioni per far decollare, come avviene con questa iniziativa, un'azione comune, associando i tantissimi attori economici, sociali, politici che si occupano di India, che sono molti, perché in realtà in Italia già oggi c'è una platea molto vasta di attori di ogni tipo, ivi compreso diciamo, il mondo accademico e universitario, che ha relazioni con l'India. E quindi si tratta di mettere, se posso usare questa espressione, a sistema tutto questo e fare in modo che la rete di relazioni che è già ampia si amplia ancora di più e soprattutto si crei una logica sistemica che consenta di rafforzare i rapporti da paese a paese. Come Presidente della Commissione Esteri della Camera dei Deputati, io confermo e assicuro che siamo assolutamente interessati a lavorare in questa direzione e quindi metteremo in campo tutte le iniziative per accompagnare questo lavoro che facciamo decollare oggi. Grazie.
Grazie mille, onorevole Fassino. La ringrazio. I'd like to thank Honorable Piero Fassino for his kind words, and I promise for all those who are connected from India, summarize briefly after the break. We will now have a short 10-minute break, just so that we can have a little pause and some refreshments. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. For all those who connected by Zoom, a little patience and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Coffee is available also via Zoom. Prova. Prova.
Start shortly.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please take a seat. We'll be starting shortly. We've had a break that was a little longer than expected, but please have a seat. Yes, thank you so much. Welcome back, and we will now start the second part of today's session. I request Ambassador Antonio Armellini, the Vice President of the Italy-India Association for Cooperation and Development, to say a few words. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Well, a lot has been said about Indo-Italian relations, a lot of figures and things, so allow me please to take a slightly different angle, if I may. Also, in light of my role as Executive Vice Chairman of AIICP, the India-Italy Association for Cooperation and Partnership, a fairly new organization set up a couple of years ago, at the behest of a group of leaders of Italian business and a few personalities from the communications and academic world, both from Italy and India. Why setting up another organization? There's many at the fore already. Well, because we felt it was useful at the time where Indo-Italian relations are meant to grow substantially, because we, on the one hand, realize how important India is, and India perhaps has a greater understanding of why Italy could be a suitable partner on which to develop relations. And in order to do that, it is important to do things which in Italy are not very widespread, namely track two organizations where you can in fact develop understanding and cooperation through venues which are not necessarily official. And that is what the AIICP is all about. I mean, the idea is that of promoting better relations with a business slant, because the core of our membership is from leading business, but with the understanding that in order to develop relations, economic relations as well, it is fundamental to understand each other better and know about each other more. And on this point, I think information is lacking on both sides. Stereotyping and generalizations run amok, and it is important to address them in order to put the relationship and the way in which you look at each other on a better plane. Now, whether we're going to be able to do this or not is up to us, but that is really what we're all about. And so we think that developing understanding, which means developing cultural relations, political understanding, and social and economic interactions is equally important. And in this light, we will be bringing this week on Friday, actually, we will be bringing to Rome the Jaipur Literature Festival, which is the largest literary festival of India and one of the largest in Asia, which has now traveled internationally. It goes here to London, New York, and other parts. And we thought it was about time that it came to Italy as well. And so we will be presenting the festival on Friday. Everyone who wants to attend is welcome, of course, at the Maxi Center in Rome. Now, having done this little spiel, may I go on to something slightly more germane? I mean, I will not talk about business relations because business relations have been talked about substantially. I will talk, if I may, just very briefly about India and Italy, what they are to each other, how to develop. Well, maybe not everybody knows that the relations between the two countries go a very long way. Giuseppe Mazzini, one of the founders of modern Italy, not many remember him in Italy, but he's certainly very well known in a number of circles in India. And why is that? Probably because at the time when Mazzini was in exile in London, he met the founding fathers of the Indian national movement, who actually studied on Mazzini's books. So Mazzini is someone who's widely remembered, and it's part of the cultural legacy of the country, which in Bengal also includes people like Gramsci, but we will leave that on the side. I mean, but that's also one of the elements of it. Italy and Italian business was at the forefront of the early developments of independent India. The first agricultural revolution in the 50s counted substantially on the support of the Italian publicly owned companies, what was then Montecatini. Indians discovered motoring through Vespa, Lambretta, and Fiat. If you talk to anyone in India who's over 50, 60, he will tell you that his first car, the one he most loved, and he considers excellent from all points of view, is the Fiat 500, something which always surprises Italians who tend to have a slightly different view of that particular car. A number of household names in Italy, such as Ferrochina, Bisleri, or Chair, are Indian companies. Marelli is the word commonly used to describe an electric van, and of course Marelli in the meantime is no longer there. So there's a strong foundation. I mean, why Fiat has now become a marginal player in the Indian scene, why Vespa is an Indian company, has a lot to say about the seesawing way in which Italian industrial and economic presence in India developed, together with a certain, how should I say, with a lot of sympathy, but less concrete concern on our relations. We are now facing, I think, and Ambassador Luca has done a fantastic job in this, a situation whereby this has changed substantially. We have exchanges, we have contacts, we devised a strategic plan for cooperation and all the rest. But I mean, this has not always been the case in the past. And looking at our two countries, I will use a gross oversimplification. Let us say that by and large, a run-of-the-mill view of Italy in India is that of a country which is simpatico, which is good in fashion, excellent in food, and not very much good at anything else. If you tell the average Indian that Italy is the second largest manufacturing power in Europe, he will not believe it. I'm not sure how many people know that in Italy, for that. But I mean, so that is, India, on the other hand, is seen in Italy as a sort of unknown giant, someone which to many people evokes the idea of spirituality, yoga, the sense of finding oneself, losing oneself in the overall dimension of the self, not understanding that it is a technological giant, an emerging industrial power, and a huge market. Class distinctions and caste, as you know, are a touchy subject in India, but let me just give you a couple of figures. The aspiring middle class, again, what a middle class is in India is again a matter of discussion, but let us use a conservative figure. Aspiring middle class in India would be today anything between 150 and 200 million people, which is equal to the high-powered market of all of the European Union. And that is something which I think is largely forgotten. And it's something on which we should concentrate our attention more. I was reading in a paper which Chesky has been doing wonderful work with, which we have been associated with and sponsored, talking about defense cooperation. The British and French were mentioned as possible contributors to the Indian defense industry, apart from the obvious competitor. Well, I mean, I think that Luca was really right in saying Italian defense industry. We had our hiccups, but everybody has had hiccups. But the Italian defense industry is a major player and is a player which can play a very crucial role. How should we develop our relations here? Well, it is fundamental to try to understand each other more. It is fundamental to develop as broad a range of possible exchanges, be it parliamentary, be it cultural, be it whatever, because that is the grounding on which you can really develop economic relations, because the two countries don't really know much about each other. Well, we may tell us something different. The true fact, the hard fact is that we don't, for a number of reasons which we can go into, but that's not the point now. So that is something which needs to be done. I think that in looking at the Indian market, it's a huge market with huge possibility. One should never forget the question of scale. it is important for small and medium-sized companies to bear that in mind, because it is a complicated market, it's a fragmented market, it's fragmented in many ways, and brilliant initiatives may fall under the weight of bureaucracy, fragmentation, the sort of things which makes the Indian market a fantastic opportunity, but a challenging one at the same time. So that is a very important element to take in mind. This being said, I may sound not sufficiently optimistic for a meeting of this kind, but I think I'm not. I think India, it is absolutely fundamental for a major manufacturing and exporting country like India to strengthen its positions on the Indian market. We have now reached a level of bilateral exchanges which we had never reached before. I was very proud during my time in India that we had broken a record, which was about 9-point-something billion, 13. But it's still way below what it could be, way below what it could be. And in order for that, we need to be much more structured in our relationship. And this involves, first of all, the institutions, public institutions, government. For the last 3 or 4 years, we've had a sufficient level, I would use the word sufficient, level of institutional exchange. But don't forget that up until 2010, the only prime minister that had ever been to India was Romano Prodi, who had been there twice. And when he had one president of the republic, it was Trumpy. Now, when the French were able to beat Eurofighter and the rest on Rafale, it is perhaps not irrelevant that Sarkozy paid 3 official visits to India in 2 years. That points to institutions. On the business side, it's not for me to advise or anything, but just make a point. It's a huge market, it's a competitive market, it's a great market, but you need to tackle it together. Size is extremely important. Well, I'll stop at that.
Thank you, Ambassador Malini. And it was beautiful to hear somebody bring up Mazzini, who still taught in Indian textbooks, by the way, in Indian history, because he inspired Mahatma Gandhi for India's struggle. Sure.
Quick on Gramsci. In Bengal, there used to be a very strong communist party. And then when you went, and the prime minister was a friend of Italy at that time. So when you went to see him in the office, there would be 3 pictures: Marx, Lenin, and Gramsci. And you would ask, who are the 3? And the Indian would say, Marx, Lenin, and then there's another comrade. We don't quite know who he is.
Thank you. And I think Gramsci's works were translated in Bengali recently with the patronage of the Italian consulate in Calcutta. That said, we have some exciting research that CESPI's experts have conducted. I would ask Daniela to introduce it, and I'd invite Abhinav Soman, to CESPI's expert from India, to speak about it. Daniela, if you can just say 2 words and introduce Abhinav Soman, I'd be grateful.
Maybe it's online. Yes. Yeah. We are realizing a study on India. The idea is to make a focus on some specific issues that we think interesting to go deeper in analysis. One is the energy transition. So we contacted some experts that help us to better understand the issue. One of these experts is with us. Thank you very much to be with us. Mr. Soman, I give you the floor.
Thank you for the introduction. So I'm Abhinav Soman. I'm based in Delhi. I was previously with a think tank where I did policy research on sustainable mobility. And today I'm with an electric vehicle OEM where I am in a role of policy advocacy. But today, of course, I'm present here as an independent expert. And thank you again to CESPI for the opportunity to work on this exploratory topic, which is about energy transition, particularly in transport sector, and what should be the optimal fuel mix that we need to go for, right? And how do we go about deciding what should be the set of alternative fuels that we sort of target for sustainable transportation? So while this was a research piece, I would say in the context of India-Italy partnership, some of the gaps and research areas identified here could be areas where there could be collaboration in terms of research, in terms of investments, pilots, technology transfer, and so on. So just to set the context. So I'll start with a quick introduction about the energy transition that's ongoing in India, followed by the energy transition specifically in the transport sector. Then to move on to what are the set of alternative fuels that are being considered in India today, and what could be some of the criteria, what could be some of the imperatives when it comes to choosing the ideal mix of alternative fuels for transport sector, and how do we go about deciding on those preferred set of alternatives, and how do we target them with policies? And finally, to conclude with certain set of recommendations. So as we all know, the energy transition in India is well underway. As of today, India consumes about 880 million tons of oil equivalent of energy, right? And this has been a more than twofold increase in energy consumption compared to just 20 years ago, right? And as per the IEA, in the 20 years ahead, there's going to be another more than doubling of energy consumption as well. But there's a difference. As of today, most of this energy is coming from three primary sources of fuel, which is coal, oil, and traditional biomass. Whereas in the 20 years ahead, this could change with renewable energy playing an increasingly important role, as well as other forms of alternative fuels. So for instance, as per the IEA, the prediction is that almost 60% of the electricity generated in the country could be coming from non-fossil sources by 2030, right? And this is in the context of a more than doubling of energy consumption by 2040, like I mentioned. Another trend to sort of factor in here is that most of this energy consumption is going to come from the energy and transport sectors and not the power sector, right? And they become then the major contributors to carbon emissions and air pollution. And therefore, and that is the reason why we need to think of sustainable fuels for transport sector in a major way going forward. Now, talking specifically about the what's happening in the transport sector, right? Now, relative to 2000, there has been a threefold increase in the annual distance traveled by Indians, right? That's about 5,000 kilometers annually per Indian. There's been more than fivefold increase in vehicle ownership as well compared to the year 2000. And as of today, 13% of the GHG emissions in the overall GHG emissions come from the transport sector. And within the transport sector, we would see that nearly half of the emissions come from freight transportation. So this is a critical element. Trucking is a major contributor to emissions today, and it will remain so in the future as well, unless there is some intervention. So what is to note here is that, electric mobility has been discussed in the wider context, and there have been policies that have been introduced to promote electric mobility. But all of these interventions are limited to road passenger transport, right? We are still not talking about freight transportation. We're still not talking about aviation, shipping, and railways. Railways is an area that has seen much more progress, though, which is why it won't be discussed extensively in this presentation, because railways is approaching near full electrification in the years ahead. So today, the energy demand from transport sector is about 100 million tons of oil equivalent, right? Which is again a more than fivefold increase compared to the past 30 years. And where does all of this energy come from? It comes from petroleum, fossil fuels at the end of the day, 95%. In other sectors, there's still a diversity of fuels, but in the transport sector, we are still hugely reliant on fossil fuels and petroleum products. The rest of the 5% probably comes from natural gas, biofuels, and electricity today. Also, there's now, like I mentioned, it's not just the road transport sector that we need to think about. There's been a threefold increase in the per capita distance flown by Indians compared to past 10 years ago, right? So now moving on to what are these alternative fuels that are being discussed in India today? What are the, where do they find application within the different modes of transport that we have? So electricity, CNG, LNG, HCNG, dimethyl ether, LPG, hydrogen, and biofuels. Biofuels, there's a whole bunch of them, right? That includes ethanol, biodiesel, algal biofuels, biomethane, methanol, and so on. So if you look at Indian policy making on energy and transport sector, you'd find that biofuels has been a strong focus. Recently, it was announced that we've achieved 10% of ethanol blending, right? So that and we've advanced our target for ethanol blending such that it'll be 20% by 2025, right? Recently, and Her Excellency Nina. So Ms. Nina actually talked about the National Hydrogen Mission. So there is going to be a promotion of hydrogen as well in the country. And similarly, EVs, we have the FAME policy, right? We have a bunch of other state level policies as well to support EVs. And CNG has seen success in a few different states, 3-4 states where they've been promoted. So one could ask the question, are we trying to promote all these alternatives in parallel? And it could be confusing for people looking to invest in this sector as to what is the government's priority, which particular fuel is going to be applied in which particular end use sector. So what would be the market size for it and so on. So this is why there is a need for a coherent look at the entire transport sector and to prioritize certain fuels depending on their end use application. And in order to prioritize them, we need to think of certain criteria. So if you look at research on this matter, if you talk to experts in the field, they all have, there are people who will favor EVs, there'll be people who are against EVs. Similarly, there'll be pros and cons for hydrogen, pros and cons for CNG and so on. It's a hotly debated topic. So one of the ways to get around it is to agree on what are the priorities from the energy transition and transport. So the categories could be, there are certain environmental objectives, there are economic objectives, social, technology is a limitation rather than an objective, and then energy security. Now, even among these categories, you could have a prioritization where the government of India might say that energy security is what's important for the next 20 years relative to environmental and economic. And so the choice of fuels that you go for would actually be different than if the government were to prioritize environmental over economic and energy security. So this is the reason why we need to, this decision has to come from the policymaker in terms of what is the prioritization, and that will drive the choice of fuels. Now, within these categories, you have many different kinds of parameters. Most often when we talk about hydrogen or electric mobility or biofuels, we think of what is the cost, what is the fuel cost, or what is the total cost of ownership, which is the cost of the fuel plus the cost of the vehicle. We also think about what is the overall benefit, right, in terms of emissions reductions, GHG emission reductions. But a more expansive set of parameters would be what is presented in front of you. So under environmental, you have something called life cycle analysis, which is looking at emissions not just at tailpipe, but also at the production of the vehicle, right, from cradle to grave, as it's called. You also need to look at air pollution, because when you compare, say, CNG, LNG against petrol and diesel, some of them tend to perform better on the GHG side of things, but they are worse off on the SOx and NOx emissions, so worse off on the air pollution, which is why those criteria also need to be brought in. Noise pollution could be a criteria. Land footprint, especially in the case of biofuels, land footprint could be an important consideration. Similarly, if you take economic criteria, think about, say, infrastructure cost. In case of electric vehicles, the electricity distribution infrastructure is already in place. What we need to install are charging stations. But if you're thinking of hydrogen, the distribution infrastructure is not already in place. We need to have that and the dispensing stations together. We could also think about infrastructure lock-in or infrastructure flexibility. So for instance, natural gas pipelines can be repurposed for hydrogen transport if we can address embrittlement. It's a technical issue that can be addressed with certain kinds of lining. So we might say that in the short term, we could go for a natural gas support for transport sector, and then have it transition to hydrogen later on and using the same infrastructure. So that could be a consideration. Then there's, of course, safety, job impact. These are pretty straightforward. The net job creation in the transition is what we're trying to understand. Technology is all about, while we may want to do hydrogen vehicles today, do we have the technology? Do we have the models available in the market for freight transportation, for instance? If not, then it becomes part of a long-term plan rather than a short-term plan. Energy efficiency and the fact that a fuel like hydrogen could be used across modes, right? It can be used in road transport, it can be used in aviation, it can be used in shipping. So that could be a strategic reason to go for hydrogen. And finally, there are energy security related issues to consider, which is, do we have domestic feedstock? Do we have the supply chain resilience, not just for the fuel, but also for the material that is used for building the vehicle or the technology? So in this case, in case of electric vehicles, it could be lithium, manganese, cobalt related material security. And also the total, it's one thing to have local resource availability, but it's another to have the local production capacity for it. So these are the, I would say, the broad set of or comprehensive set of factors. There could be more, but these are choices. These are some of the criteria that are extensively discussed in literature when experts are debating the choice between different fuels.
Mr. Soman, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to ask you to stay under another 2 minutes because we have a long list of speakers.
Sure. I'm almost done. So then the two other critical factors are the timeline for the transition and targets. So in terms of timeline, again, these are choices that have to be made by policymakers because both of these factors determine what kind of fuels we zero in on. And at the moment, we don't have a sectoral level target under our NDC Paris Agreement commitment. This is an example of a particular approach that can be taken. It's called multi-criteria decision analysis or analytical hierarchy process. It basically starts with the objective. It assigns certain relative ranking to the criteria, and then each of the fuels are evaluated against those criteria based on those relative rankings to arrive at the optimal fuel mix. So finally, I'll conclude with the recommendations. One of the things is that India needs to come out with sectoral level sort of targets, which is for transport sector, both keeping in mind its Paris Agreement targets as well as the net zero target to make a tangible reduction in emissions. Doing that requires robust primary data collection. Today in India, we don't have the equivalent of a national transport survey. So a lot of the models that are forecasting transport energy demand are actually using data that is estimated. It's not based on on-ground primary data, which results in varying results, a range of results across these different models. It's also important to clarify the goals and objectives. This is a political or a policymaker's sort of choice of what should be those objectives. And finally, using a method like MCDA or something else, we prioritize the fuel mix and we account for all the different factors that go into deciding for a fuel. So with that, I will close the presentation. And like I've mentioned, in the context of India-Italy partnership, these are possibly areas for collaboration, either on research or investment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Soman, for such a deep presentation. Unfortunately, we've been running over time for everything that we've been doing. So I'd really like to request our next speakers to stay, if possible, within 5 minutes. I'd like to introduce next Roberto Leonardi, the Regional Officer for Asia of Assicurazioni Generali. Mr. Leonardi.
Thank you very much, and good day and good evening from Hong Kong. To their excellencies, other guests and hosts. As mentioned, I'm responsible for Asia for Generali, and specifically for me, it's a pleasure to present to this audience on Generali's thinking on the Indian market, and specifically, obviously, the insurance market. As the first multinational insurer to acquire majority stakes in both its life and general insurance companies in India, it's a privilege to represent Italian investment in India over the last 15 years, and it's become and will continue to be a strategically very important global market for Generali as an insurer. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes just to take you through our thinking, and as indicated, we'll try to shorten it up and not spend a lot of time. But very simply, India is one of the fastest growing economies in Asia, as you can see on the left-hand side of the page, has a strong GDP, real GDP growth rate, while coupled with a relatively low insurance penetration. And on this slide, I'm specifically speaking about the general insurance or non-life insurance market. On the right-hand side are all of the things that Generali really likes about India as a market. There's very favorable demographics with a low median age, a rapidly increasing working population, where 61% of India's population is under 35 years, growing per capita disposable income, and a rising number of affluent households, households earning more than $10,000 a year, increased from 8% to 27% over the last 10 years. Most important for Generali when we look at certain indicators is that the rate of consumption growth is at a key inflection point in India, with consumption increasing exponentially as GDP per capita has grown. And what we have seen across Asia and across all of our emerging markets is that when GDP per capita exceeds $2,000 more or less, we start to see a very rapidly expanding domestic growth rate in terms of consumption. And India is at the cusp of crossing this type of threshold, which we have seen become very important in other markets. If we can go to the next slide, please. So something similar here, which is really just a comparison to mature European markets. And I would just focus on the middle column, where we see that the penetration rate for insurance is still relatively low, as well as the level of insurance density, which is measured over there in 16 euros per person, relative to many of the other countries that you see below you, shows the extent to which the insurance density in India still has an opportunity to grow. Multiplied with a very large working population, this creates a very substantial opportunity in the future relative to more mature European markets, and obviously creates an interesting opportunity for Generali, where we very much want to continue to grow in this market. If we go to the next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about the things which create tailwinds for the Indian insurance market over and above the things which I have already mentioned. A lot of factors such as structural reforms, a competitive market, and growing digital disintermediation are aiding overall growth in insurance in India. And I'll talk specifically about digital in a little while, as well as all of this is being very favorably supported by policy measures from the government of India. On the left-hand side, you can see what we consider long-term sustainable growth drivers for the industry. And I've mentioned some of these before. The growth in the financial industry includes the fact that there is an increasing awareness about financial products, including insurance. While it is perhaps a terrible thing to say, one of the positive aspects of COVID has been globally that it has helped with education and awareness of the need for insurance, particularly for protection, in a way that the insurance industry itself has been frankly unable to deliver on the scale that a pandemic such as COVID has done. Innovation and efficiency, the scope of Internet of Things in the Indian insurance market continues to go far beyond telematics and customer risk management. This is an area where we see substantial growth. There is also increasing competition, which has created an increasing number of insurance providers with a growing range of sophisticated products. And the recent steps by the regulatory authority, the insurance regulatory authority, to decrease the level of approvals that are required for insurance products has been extremely helpful in helping insurers in future accelerate their speed to market with more innovative products. We've also seen growth in specific segments, particularly microinsurance and health insurance, areas where Generali is both active, both in the crop sector, as well as retail and group health insurance businesses, and digital intermediation, as I mentioned. I'll talk about it a little bit more. On the right-hand side, I won't spend a lot of time except perhaps on the first one, where the government has recently taken the strong step to allow foreign investors to step up to majority and up to 74% in their insurance companies, which we have recently done. And from our perspective, this offers an exciting opportunity to effectively be able to drive the growth and the direction of our business. Let's go to the next slide, please. I mentioned India's digital revolution. I won't spend a lot of time here except to point out a few key statistics on the right-hand side. Global mobile data traffic has expanded at more than 6 times and is expected to reach about 77 exabytes per month. As already mentioned earlier, it is the #1 in mobile data consumption in the world and the fastest growing large market for digital capabilities. And this is obviously extremely important to insurance companies, both from an efficiency perspective, as well as being able to service our customers far more efficiently than was the case in the past. Let's go to the next page, please. So how do we think about the Indian market? I think we've captured many of these topics on previous pages, and on the right-hand side, we really just offer a comparison to other key markets, particularly around Asia Pacific. You can see that the density of premiums relative even to other markets in emerging Asia Pacific, as well as other more mature markets in Asia, is still very, very low. And the penetration rates for insurance in India are still relatively low compared to other markets in the region, therefore creating a very attractive market for insurance companies. We go to the next page. This basically just talks about the expected growth rates and offers an opportunity on the next page to compare India specifically to China. But you can see that the past growth rates for both the general insurance business as well as the life insurance business have been in the double digits. The very strong growth is expected to continue in the future, particularly for the private sector players such as ourselves. And this is a very attractive growth rate relative to any market in the world. And combined with improving regulation and the fact that the market has been able to open up for foreign investors, makes this strategically a critically important market for Generali to compete in. Let's go to the next page. The purpose of this page, without taking too long, was really to indicate on the far left-hand side the Indian market in terms of, in the dark red dot, in terms of the non-life insurance density as well as the penetration. And you can see where Korea is on the opposite end of the scale. In Asia, there's a very long distance to travel. You can see that in terms of maturity, China, Thailand, and Malaysia are not that far ahead of India, while the more mature developed Asian markets are very far ahead. But if Generali thinks in terms of 20 to 50-year time horizons, when India will be far further to the right and represent probably one of the 3 largest insurance markets in the world, it is very much an opportunity for us to get into the market early. We've only been in the market for 15 years, and given that Generali is a 190-year plus old insurance company, in 25 to 50 years, we would see India as one of our core markets in the world. On the right-hand side is a deliberate comparison between India and China. And all that this graph is trying to say is that 15 years ago, the Chinese insurance market was the same size that the Indian insurance market is today. And given the relative growth rates of the 2 markets, we expect the same kind of rapid development that we have seen in the last 15 years in China, and definitely an even faster growth rate that we expect by 2040 the size of the Indian insurance market will be very close to rivaling the Chinese insurance market for size. An important market for us to contribute to. On the next page, please. So very briefly on the left-hand side, the advantages and benefits of doing business in India. A stable economy that has grown strongly. A lot of business reforms where India's government has constantly eased the ability to invest in the market. A very strong level of digital competitiveness where India is really a powerhouse in terms of technological innovation globally, and a massive consumer market that is still only emerging into being a consumer economy. On the right-hand side, some comments around the risks and challenges of doing business in India. The ease of doing business is being worked on all the time. It is definitely improving, but something that is still being worked on. As was stated earlier, it is a vast and fragmented market. It is extremely important to choose where you want to compete and how you want to compete, and to make sure that these are segments where you can be successful. Infrastructure, while it has been a challenge, it is definitely improving, and there were statements made earlier about the massive investments that are being made, and safeguarding intellectual property is certainly something which is gaining a lot of focus, particularly on easing the path of these issues through the courts. We can move to my last page. Just to summarize, our experience has been that you need to adjust and alter your products, your price points, your propositions, and your services to fit the Indian market. And it would be nice to say that there would be one solution to all parts of India. The reality is that that is not the case. A product which may work well in the west or in the north will not necessarily work well in the south or in the east. We have had to adapt products for various markets, different language preferences, different distribution channels, and we continue to see that. There can be bureaucratic barriers. You should anticipate some delays. These are vastly improving, and we would very much like to thank the new chairman of the IRDA, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, who has made massive strides in improving, and even though he has only recently come to his office, and has been very helpful in helping us move to our majority position. And then lastly, I would just simply say to be very aware of cultural differences in the workplace. Understanding the Indian culture and mindset is going to be critical to be successful in India, and to be very local is going to be extremely important. Thank you, and I will stop there.
Thank you so much. I'd like to point out that in another 10 years, 500 million Indians will be between 15 and 34 years of age. So it kind of increases the market for non-life insurance quite a bit. I'd really request our speakers from now on to keep under 5 minutes, because otherwise I'm going to interrupt them and I'm timing them. So next is Satinder Kapoor, Grimaldi Alliance's partner in India and the lead partner of SKAA. Mr. Kapoor. I think we have a connection issue. Oh, here he is. No, this is not Mr. Kapoor. This is.
Can you see me?
Yes, now we can see you.
Yes. Thank you, Vas. Illustri amici, signore e signori. So one of the disadvantages of being down the list of speakers is that your audience gets tired, and possibly what you were going to say has already been dealt with by the earlier speakers. Still, I had prepared a 30-page slide presentation, which I'm not going to present. And this entire presentation is going to be mailed to all the participants. And rather, I would invito la vostra attenzione for a story that I would like to narrate. The India story. The question is, why India and Italy amongst so many countries in the world? It might interest you to know that way back in the 27th century BC, the Roman Emperor Augustus Caesar received 2 trade missions from India. It's very surprising. And there is a town in India, which is Arikamedu near Puducherry, which still has Roman ruins. The only place in the world, apart from Rome, where you will find Roman ruins. And this is an attestation of the fact that India and Italy have been trading partners for the last many, many years. And the story continues as we go forward. So I would just like to mention, in fact, I would not stress on the various reasons why you should invest in India. You have ease of doing business, you have 100% FDI, ease of entry, repatriation of dividends, etc., etc., etc. There are many, many factors. But I would like to concentrate on some of the initiatives of the government of India on a particular segment, which is a very important segment, that is the renewable energy transition, which a lot of my friends have already spoken about. So I'll just take a minute to set out what are the advantages which the government of India has initiated, which are driving factors for people to come and invest in this rather important segment. First and foremost, we have a reduced corporate income tax, which is 25% for every other industry in the country. For a renewable energy transition opportunity, it is 15%, which is 10% points lower than any other industry. I think it's a very, very remarkable kind of initiative. We have a mega renewable energy park, whereby you can set up at concessional land rates and you can just plug and play. All your energy can be transmitted and be synchronized with every other power generation unit in the country. We have accelerated depreciation. As financial experts, you would understand the impact of accelerated depreciation of your capital investments. You have concessional import duty on the capital goods. You have concessional GST. You have production-linked incentives. And importantly, a preference in public procurement. And I can assure my friend Vas that I am going to wrap up this short talk very, very soon, maybe lesser than 5 minutes, so that I can spare some time for my subsequent speakers. But I would just like to summarize the commonalities between India and Italy. We have a similar cultural ethos. See the family units. And I have a lot of friends. I've been dealing with Italy for the last 20 years. A lot of the Italian CEOs in India, and I'm sure some of them are on the call right now here, have spent 5, 7, 10 years in India. And the children have grown up here and they do not want to leave this country. I've seen them grow. I've seen the affinity because they can feel a vibrancy which is very similar to the Italian way of living, Italian way of thinking, Italian way of dealing with your families, for example. Of course, the other factors to run them through very soon is a big market, stable economy. And as a lawyer, as a practicing lawyer, I can tell you that we have a very mature and developed judicial system. And I would like to confirm to my friend from Generali that the intellectual property regime is something I can really boast of. I'm not contradicting him. I'm just trying to say that today, an intellectual property case would give you, which you go to the court, what is important is an interim order immediately. In 1 week, you can get protection, interim protection. Then the case might take a few months or a few years, whatever. But your protections start from the very inception of the case. So we have a very, very determined judicial system here. We have a skilled technical workforce, everybody knows, low wages, and a democratic government policy. And I think here is that the two prime ministers of our two countries, His Excellency Mario Draghi and His Excellency Narendra Damodar Modi are common in their vision, and I think we should take this forward. Lastly, I can just assure you that as a partner of Grimaldi, we are here to take all the headaches off. Please decide to come to India, and we will make sure that you have a seamless entry into this lovely country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Satinder, and thank you for keeping it short. He has been very, very kind. We have to change our order briefly because Matilde Giglio, the co-founder of Evan, has to leave. So I'd give her the floor. Matilde, please keep your remarks to less than 5 minutes and do share with us your experience of running a startup in India.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I'll be absolutely super brief. If I may, I will just say a few words on my experience of early stage businesses, innovation, and kind of technology in India. In a way, I am the living proof that actually India is a market that is absolutely worth investing in. I am, on the one hand, the co-founder of Even Healthcare, which is a company that offers unlimited OPD and IPD to customers in India by partnering directly with hospitals. We have raised about $20 million from some of the best investors in the world, including Khosla Ventures and Funders Fund. And I'm also an angel investor and a scout for VCs spread across the world that actually want to have access to Indian companies, but just don't have their foot here, basically. So I invest for them. In terms of the biggest kind of learning that I've had moving to India, in a way, because I'm Italian originally and I lived in the UK and the US before, is that I believe the biggest mistake that somebody outside of India actually can make is to think that India is kind of just the West and is catching up with the West. But I think that's simply not true. Rather, India is on a, in a way, completely different track, right? So the government and even the startup ecosystem are building a tech stack that will, I believe, allow them to actually take a massive shortcut and potentially even overtake the West. So just to give a few examples, if you think about UPI, the system for payments in India is better than any kind of infrastructure that exists in the US even. Or for e-commerce, the ONDC, obviously we're just scratching the surface of what that can become. And finally, for my sector, which is healthcare, the national insurance stack. So these will all have a massive impact on the biggest sectors of any economy, which are, financial services, healthcare, retail. So for somebody like me, an entrepreneur, one of the biggest opportunities in India is really its very low market penetration. And actually, Roberto was mentioning it for some really essential products. So for example, you have only 2% of the population in India that has direct or indirect access to financial markets. And the same is true for my sector, which is retail health insurance, with only 4% market penetration. So leaving kind of the majority of the population actually completely unprotected. But with these progressive kind of tech-enabled changes that the government is implementing right now post-pandemic, you will see these markets that are already growing double digits every year now grow really exponentially. So the most exciting opportunity for somebody like me building a company in India is that I think in 5 to 10 years maximum, you will have companies that are kind of as big as Tencent and Alibaba in China, but not in advertising and gaming, but in sectors that actually are really impactful, like healthcare and financial services. So this is why I think India is really, really exciting place to be. Thank you. Hope this was short enough.
Thank you so much, Matilde. And it's really good to see an industry giant like Generali and a startup like Evan, both in India. Next, I'd like to request Amey Prabhu, Managing Director of NAFA Capital. He happens to be in Singapore right now, so that's further east than India. Amey.
Thank you, Vas, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak at this event. And firstly, I've been hearing the speakers speak, and I think I've been very impressed by the depth of knowledge that all of you have and the commitment you have to build closer links between our two countries. And I think, and of course, one of the earlier speakers alluded, I think it was Mr. Kapoor, to the great relations that we have with Italy from the Roman times, from ancient times. And I think as we go ahead, I mean, as we, and we had people who are running startups, Generali is doing great work, Ansaldi is in India. And again, I think the key opportunity going forward is, the way I see it, is five-pronged. Number one is, I think we need to promote greater investments, both on portfolio investments into India. A lot of us talk about FDI, and I'll allude to that as we go ahead in the 5 minutes that I have. But I think portfolio investments, both in Indian public equities as well as in Indian VCs. So there's a lot of money in Italy, a lot of family offices in Italy. There are old family offices in Italy. There's a lot of money managed out of Italy. So we'd love to see Italian capital, both family office and institutional capital, coming into India, both in public equities, in the VC space. And again, you guys get where, I mean, you have a banker who's your, a former central banker being your prime minister, but that doesn't mean you also get the same rates on your deposits the way the ECB pays you. I mean, India also has very attractive debt markets. You can get very good Indian paper, globalized Indian paper of corporates such as Tata, UPL, at very attractive rates. So I think investing in the Indian debt markets is also something that one should consider and definitely look at. So that's my first bucket, portfolio investments. My second bucket, of course, is FDI. India offers very exciting prospects for FDI. And also in terms of looking at, I mean, there are several sectors we can go deeper. I mean, you have Generali is already invested here in insurance, but I think infrastructure, agriculture, agri is a great sector to be in, and that also is something we can consider. Number three is also in the art and culture space. I think we can look at greater collaboration between our two countries on the arts and culture space. You have a phenomenal film industry in Italy, so do we. And I think that could be a great area of collaboration between the two great countries. Number four is on joint ventures. Of course, it's a subset of the FDI, but I do think that Italian companies, both in the industrial space, in infrastructure, there are very strong industrial companies, but also in the fashion, art, and design space, could also have a lot of collaboration with India. And this could be both ways. I mean, you're looking not just, again, we're not just hungry for investment. We would also look at Italy, and that's the fifth point I was coming to. But again, speaking on this, I think we could see a lot of collaboration in terms of Italian, and I think it's Italian design house. I mean, we have phenomenal designers in India. There's humongous appetite for fashion and design in India, and I think that and there's tremendous consumption power in India. I mean, while we have 1.4 billion people, and while our per capita GDP might be about 2,100 USD per year on a nominal basis, you are still looking at almost 500 million people with the consumption ability of a middle income country. So you are definitely looking at an ability to consume, and I think that could be a very interesting part. And number five is, I think Italy should position itself as a hub for India into Europe. Indians have traditionally looked at the UK as being our hub into the EU or into the world, given our relationship. But post-Brexit, I think if you can position Italy as the hub for Indians, we are culturally similar. We are family oriented. We like our food. I always say the further south you go into Italy, the further close you come to India, both geographically as well as culturally. So I think we're culturally also very, very similar people. So I think I think that's something to be done at a G2G level. I see that the embassy of Italy is here, and of course our ambassador also, I believe, was here earlier. And I think that if we can position Italy as a gateway to Europe for India, I mean, we have a lot of Indian tourists who go to Italy. As Vas knows, I'm myself coming this summer to Italy for a wedding, and hope to see you then, Vas. But I think the criticality here is that we need to, very importantly, look at positioning Italy as a EU and maybe a hub for Indians to invest there. And I think we definitely need to get the tax regimes brought in. I believe someone's made a point on that. And I think that's something, I mean, I think that can be addressed at a government level. But I think Italy should position, Indian businesses are becoming larger. We are now the 5th largest economy in the world, and we will definitely be marching steadfastly towards the 3rd largest very soon. So the way You have a lot of Chinese investment in Italy. You should also look at positioning in for Indian investment in Italy and looking at Italy as a hub. Maybe we can even have Italy as a hub for Indian flights going west. Back in the day, Jet Airways used to do that through Milan, but again, we can position that. So I think this can be both ways. I think if we can build our collaboration on these 5 pillars, we can certainly look at greater collaboration between the two. And I think I do look forward to being on several more panels like these. And I believe I have met my 5-minute mark. So Vas, over to you. Thank you. Grazie.
Thank you for being so precise, Amay, and so concise, but thank you for covering a lot of points. And I'd next request Claudio Maffioletti, the Secretary General of the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce, to say a few words. Again, Claudio, please be brief.
Good afternoon and good evening to all the people attending from India. Well, very briefly, I wanted to introduce myself and the organization I represent. I'm the CEO and Secretary General of the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce. We are part of the network of Italian Chambers of Commerce in the world. We are what I like to call ourselves a private institution, in the sense that we are associations of companies and professionals. But we are recognized by the Italian Ministry of Economic Development. In India, we are the oldest Italian Chamber of Commerce in the Asian continent. We were established in 1955 by one gentleman, Ambassador Mendini, remember that, who launched one brand in India called Bisleri, which was bottled water. For whoever of you who's a little bit familiar with India, you know that bottled water in India is called Bisleri. So we are, as an Italian institution in India, we are connected to these kind of pioneering entrepreneurs that at the end of the 50s, the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, ventured in definitely uncharted markets like India. As a Chamber of Commerce, as an association, we represent approximately 1,000 members, which include both Italian companies interested in doing business or investing in the India market, but also, perhaps more importantly, Italian companies that have invested in India, Indo-Italian joint ventures, and Indian importers, distributors, and retailers of Italian technologies and brands and products. At present, there are approximately 650 Italian companies that have invested in India, with a total stock of investments since 2014, because that's the data which is available, of approximately 16 billion euros invested by Italian companies in India in the past 10 years or so. 5,000 people employed by Italian companies in India. And if we talk about Italian brands present in the Indian market, in consumer products or also industrial or manufacturing products, we easily surpass 3,000 Italian brands present in the Indian market. So it's not that Italy is not present in India. It's definitely present, but it could be more present than it is right now. One of the elements, and again, sorry, I'm particularly close to Ambassador Mendini because he was ambassador when I first went to India. That was 15 years ago. So somehow he's witness of my Indian life. One element which is crucial for increasing a progressive integration between the two economies. It's not just trade, it's not just investment, it's about making our business communities work better together. That element of understanding and perception still needs to be worked on. Ambassador De Luca pointed out about some strategic sectors in which Indian and Italian companies should be, what already institutions are doing, looking into in the next few years, which is energy transition, which is green economy, sustainable economy. However, the bulk and the presence of Italian companies in India is on traditional sectors: manufacturing, engineering, automotive, auto components. Those investments are the bulk of the Italian presence worldwide, and India is no exception. So what should be done more or better to increase that presence? And again, I go back to the perception element. There is a need of mutual understanding. Italy is not only the 3F's country, it is the second largest manufacturer in Europe and the 4th/5th largest worldwide. And the two things are not separate. I mean, we are great at doing good furniture products, good cars, good fashion garments, accessories, because we do invest a lot in developing our manufacturing knowledge and our manufacturing prowess. That linkage between lifestyle and manufacturing prowess is not only so immediate, it's not even immediate for Italians themselves. On the other side, India is often portrayed in Italy, a little bit less of late, but it's kind of a regular feature as an exotic country, yoga, meditation, big cities, a lot of people, but very few are aware of the fact that it has been pointed out by the previous speakers that in 2021, which has been a dreadful year for everyone in India, there were 44 unicorns, which means startups that in 3 years' time achieved a turnover of more than $1 billion. And all of these unicorns are digital intensive unicorns. So they do either develop digital marketplaces to sell anything, which you can imagine, from insurances, from health services, as Matilde Giglio pointed out, but also to agricultural machinery. I'll finish now. Sorry. There is a lot to be said. So, sorry. All right. So, most of them are digital intensive, also to develop a digital infrastructure, which, as we could see, has a very strong penetration, but still more can be done in the entire country. So, we Italians know how to do things, and we know how to do them well. India has a dire need of understanding and somehow adapting to their cultural way of doing things, our way of making things. And that is one area in which perhaps Indo-Italian relationships, besides the sectors which have been pointed out, and the geographical, geopolitical elements that are coming to the surface, that area of how well integrated the two manufacturing industries will be the defining moment of Indo-Italian relations in the next few years. Thank you very much, and pass the word to you.
Thank you, Claudio. I'm very pleased to see passionate advocates of India like Ambassador De Luca and Claudio. That leaves very little work for people like me to do. So that's very good. I'd like to invite Vijay Raghavan Kannan, the CEO and chair of Sadhguru Management Consultants, which has been in the agricultural space for 40 years, to say a few words. Vijay, I must request you to stay really brief because it's getting late in India, as you know, and people here as well are getting a little antsy. So please stay very brief with your remarks.
Thank you, Vas. You know, as a global research and consulting firm, we have had a deep engagement both on the Indian and Italian enterprises. I bring my greetings to excellencies as well as peers from the industry. I would like to cover two aspects of opportunities. One is in the healthcare and pharmaceuticals, which is a driving element. Other one is the food and agriculture. India and Italy are almost similar size of manufacturing for pharma. It's about $30 billion each. But the difference is that India meets about 90% of its own requirement, and Italy is largely an exporter of pharmaceutical products, importing quite a bit, almost 60% of your requirement yourself. I think this is an opportunity that I see between two countries of propelling cross investments today Of course, we have some successful Italian companies like the Menarini in India that set a footprint and growing today. But number of Italian pharmaceutical giants such as Agnellini, Bracco, Ricordetti, all of them, I think, have a great potential to step into India. Indian healthcare market is about $165 billion today. And by end of the decade, we see it to go up to $400 billion. We have strong presence of Swiss companies here, the French companies, but I think the leadership rests with the Italian companies and high quality substances, therapeutic, active substances, therapeutics, as well as immunological products. So this is an opportunity that I see as a cross-cultural, cross-country opportunity between India and Italy. The other element is the innovation in healthcare. The Science recently published top 5 countries that have innovated for COVID. Italy and India stand number 4 and number 5 with the largest number of publications today. So we have a big synergy. Each country invests about $2 billion in frontier research in healthcare. If we can synergize it, combine it, I think we have much more rapid throughput in research outcome between our research organizations. And also the fact that we have a number of platforms such as accelerators and innovation centers in both the countries that can partner very well today. Corollary to the human healthcare, animal healthcare is one Italy today leads very well. Again, you're among the top 5 in the world in terms of animal healthcare and nutrition. India is emerging to be 3rd largest market in that segment. And I think that's an opportunity for Italian companies to engage as well. Of course, in the culinary area, Italian and Indian food are in the forefront of the global interest. We would like to see a lot more Italian companies stepping in there. We still have, major absence of Italian giants here, including Parmalat, the dairy company that's done so well globally. If you don't have presence of Agricola Italiana, AAI is known for excellent poultry products in the world. India is the 2nd largest poultry market today. We have others, such as American and French companies which have exploited the market today. I think that's a big potential for us to exploit. I think there's also a major element of Italy leading in agriculture input segment with the biologicals. I think that's another opportunity where India is moving into substantially for green agriculture. I think that's another area where you see tremendous opportunity for at least a dozen Italian companies that are in the forefront of global presence there. So I think these are some of we do love Italian food. We have presence of Lavazza, we have presence of Ferrero, but there are a lot more companies. The Italian Apple came in a little later to India, but penetrated the markets today. I think food is one area where, especially food processing machinery, you're the leader in the world. India is going to be the largest market for food processing machinery. I think to localize that, partner with Indian institutions would be amazing opportunity as well. So I think life sciences is broadly one area where I see tremendous opportunity for both the countries to synergize. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. We hope to see more agro-food tech investments between India and Italy in the future. We have Paolo Brichetti now, and after that we'll have one small concluding speaker. Paolo is the director and founder of Credit Access India, and probably one of the few Italian entrepreneurs to have dared to list his company on the Bombay Stock Exchange, something I've been very, very passionately advocating for. So Paolo, please.
Thank you everyone. And I will try to be brief, but give you the perspective of, let's say, a group of Italian family offices and families that decided to join together and do business in India. And actually, one of the businesses listed now is a 2 billion euro market cap company listed in the Mumbai Stock Exchange since 2018. So I'm talking about 2 initiatives, 2 let's say, group of companies The first one is Credit Access is today the largest microfinance group in India and Southeast Asia, serving 5 million clients with 20,000 employees operating in India, Indonesia, and Philippines. We started 15 years ago. The largest part of investors are Italian, actually, and today still is controlled by Italian investors, and it shows the ability of Italian investors to gather together, do business in India, and actually develop a business till going public and going forward. The second initiative is Asia Impact. Asia Impact is a platform of impact investments, again, majority funded by Italian entrepreneurs, Italian investors. Today, Asia Impact is focusing on free area, financial services, agri-tech, and electric micromobility. We spoke about actually the electrical or the ecological transition in mobility, which is very much a hot, investment thematic in India, but not only in India. And together with this thematic, also, of course, financial inclusion and the let's say, food value chain management are very strategic, important investment thematic where we can play a role. We can bring also the experience of Italians, companies in India, which is something I think, let's say, is working well. We have been doing business in India since 1996, so for 26 years, and we have been investing in companies and setting up new ventures from scratch, and I have to say the experience so far is extremely positive. I will try to just exactly list, some reason, but maybe, something you may already know, when you invest in India, you can see and you can leverage on a remarkable human capital, solid legal and regulatory framework, of course, in English language, which helps a lot, deep and efficient financial system, stable democracy, quite safe from an external risk perspective, and of course an immense population, which is at the end of the day an immense market in any different segment by income, by culture, is so, whatever angle you look for, the Indian market is just immense, I would say. But going to the next slide, maybe it's interesting to see the experience of Credit Access Grameen, the company I was referring to, which is today the leader in microfinance in India. We went from 0 to 16,000 employees, 4 million customers, and a market cap of 2 billion euro in 13 years. So it's been a tremendous journey and still growing a lot. Of course, I tried to summarize the why and how we've been able to do that. Of course, somehow we enjoyed the opportunity to go into the right sector at the right time in the right place. Microfinance is a business that fit extremely well in India. And we invested and we started from zero this business 15 years ago. And of course, we have been enjoying the right, let's say, right ride at the right time. But it's not only that, it's about the right management mix. Someone before me was saying, or many before, I think, saying that between India and Italy, there is a a special somehow link. I mean, we share similar values, and I have to say that the management of credit access, not only in India, also in the region, is always a mix of Italian and Indians, and it works pretty well. I mean, the two, let's say, these two cultures somehow are able to combine and to work together pretty well. We have been always helped also from the local regulatory and legal system. The RBI, which is the central bank in India, has been extremely supportive, positive, and has been able to regulate a new business model without cracking it down, which is very remarkable. I remember 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when microfinance was just booming in India and was supposed to be an unknown business, unregulated, and eventually there was the first IPO, 1 billion market cap at IPO. So, I mean, all the community was shocked. What is this? I mean, it's a new business, it's not regulated. And of course, there was a lot of criticism also. But I think RBI, the central bank in India, was able really to take it on the right way. So regulate without cracking it down, without panicking, without being, overwhelmed by, this uncertainty, but just was able to understand the business, regulate the business, and make this industry translate into a very solid part of the financial sector, which is today, a remarkable achievement, I would say, thanks to central bank. Of course, also global financial markets helped. Global financial market believe in India, invest in India, and are attracting capital to India. And this, of course, is the fuel that we need to grow our business. And of course, and we have been through several shocks. There was demonetization in 2016, and of course the COVID, and a lot of up and down, but thanks to a very high quality management that you can find in India, resilience of customers and the right approach of the regulators, we have been able to, let's say, sail through different shocks and let's say, tough period, but always going back and gaining ground and volume and strength at each time. So just last slide on, let's say, the takeaways of our experience in India. Of course, this is something I'm sure you appreciate and you know well, but just let me remark that developing a business in India goes much beyond, let's say, exporting product or services. And, you have to be clear of what you are looking for at first. I mean, is a complex market, is a huge market. And my recommendation would be, if you want to play in this market, you have to play bold, understand, go down there, really establish, because there's plenty of opportunity, but not for, let's say, take it short or for shortcut. A good business must always respect and reward all stakeholders, but this is true even more in India. I mean, respecting all stakeholders, understanding the different point of view, and developing a business which is rewarding the different, let's say, stakeholders is extremely important. Be ready to plan and invest for big numbers. India is a scale game. You can gain and you can compete if you are able to go bold, to go and to scale up. So, I mean, it's not a country for, tiny businesses. And then trust, of course, select and trust the local key management and independent board members and directors. India offer high quality human capital. Doing business without leveraging on it does not make sense. I mean, trying to go in India and just trying to bring your own culture, your own, let's say, way of doing business without understanding and somehow absorbing the way of doing business in India does not make sense. You can earn much more if you leverage on local management, local, let's say, board members, and of course discuss with them and find your own way, your own model, taking into account the local reality. This is extremely important. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Paolo. You conclude, just short concluding remarks from Mr. Ravi Kumar, who is a senior public policy expert from India, who will just give us a brief vote of thanks, and then we are done for today.
Namaste to one and all. And it is evening, good evening here in India. I thank all the speakers. To take their names will take a long time. So many institutions, so many ideas have come in front of us. The speakers came prepared with a lot of inputs that has enriched all of us. I stand for India. I stand for Italy. And this webinar has proved I also stand for international relations. Thank you very much. Coming to the less spoken subject, that is cultural relations between India and Italy. Before the Italian Roman civilization, there was the Etruscan civilization, where you find the painting of Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita from Ramayana. And in the 13th century, Leonardo Fibonacci, he translated the Arabic book into Latin, which introduced Indian numbers into Italy. That's how the number system came to all over Europe. That was a great work done by Fibonacci. And a little later, Marco Polo visited India, China, and many other countries. And in his remarks, he has said, the richest city that he has seen was in South India, the Vijayanagar Empire. So there are many similarities. Many people have worked between India and Italy in the past. Now we have to take these cultural inputs further. Thanks to Gaspar Goresio, in 1852, he established a chair for Sanskrit in Italy. Then he also translated the great book Valmiki Ramayana into 10 volumes from Sanskrit to Italian and introduced Valmiki Ramayana to the European audience. So Italy has given something to India. India has given something to Italy. And now we have to work towards cherishing their dreams of bringing the two countries together. In the 21st century, trade is the way forward. And so we have been discussing on that. I'll just end with one example. Italian Republic, Benito Craxi, the first socialist prime minister, he came to India in the 80s, not for the reason of trade or commerce or politics. He came for spiritual emancipation and met Sri Satya Sai Baba. Similarly, some years before, Italian Nobel Prize winner Enrico Fermi, he went to America for furthering his knowledge on nuclear science. We hope in the years to come, some Italian will come to India for spiritual emancipation along with these growing trade between India and Italy. Thank you very much.
With that, I would like to thank all of you online and offline for having had patience with us and having attended today. I invite Francesco, the host of our evening, to say a few words and conclude today's evening. Thank you, Francesco.
So just few words to say thank you to everybody. The level of the discussion, the kind of intervention that we heard is so high that confirmed the reason on the basis of which we decided to have this event together. If there is a case in which I strongly believe there is room for give continuity to this initiative, is this one. Discussing it now with Daniele, we hope that there will be room for a global and continuous cooperation to create a very friendly legal framework between India and Italy. I strongly believe that a level playing field that allow company on both sides in the investing activity that can be upgraded without limits and on the basis of what we hear today have to be done. And the kind of support that we can put at disposal is, as confirmed to the ambassador this morning, this afternoon, is at your disposal. I think that we have to work together to create a kind of observatory in order to work on a very regular basis to help, as already done by institutions like the Chamber of Commerce and all the other partners acting on a very regular way, in between India and Italy. But in my opinion, the legal system can be improved. The level of agreement that have to be reached between Italy and India can be helped by a stronger cooperation, also from a legal perspective. Not for a case we are on both sides, and we hope that we can help this kind of cooperation. With this spirit, and say one more thank you to everybody, I invite you to have a final coffee all together. And thanks a lot for all the intervention and your presence. Thank you.